Hey guys, this is another Baldur's Gate 3 video. So today I'm going to be looking at character creation, in particular races and classes, just from my own experience. Just wanted to put it out there. I mean, ultimately the gameplay experience will depend on your own personal preferences, so I'd say certainly go with racing classes that you enjoy playing really. But if you do want to optimize your character, I'm going to give you some tips on that, and also just my personal preferences in terms of particular archetypes that I like working with. So in early access you have a choice of 6 different races. So you have eight different races and 6 different classes. Just going to work from the classes to begin with. So you've got cleric, fighter, ranger, rogue, warlock, wizard. So just starting off with cleric. So clerics are representatives of the gods that they worship, wielding potent divine magic for good or ill. So I think a cleric is a really important part of your party. They're the main healing class in the game, and depending on what sort of build you have, they can be quite tanky, or they can work in more like a wizard, casting spells as well, and even slightly like a sort of roguelike build as well. So the main thing with the cleric is that you've got more subclasses compared with the others. So you already have one character who you pick up, Shadowheart, who comes with the trickery domain. So the trickery domain is shared by wicked, chaotic, and mischievous deities alike, those who channel trickery, specialize in deception and illusion magic. So that gives you some sort of idea about the type of approach you're going to be taking with the trickery domain. It's personally not really one of my favorites, so I'm not going to focus on too much. And also you already have a character or a companion in the game who actually has that particular domain, so I would suggest if you're since you've already got somebody of that domain, you might want to just use her if in fact you want to go with that one. Then you have the life domain, which is quite a tanky sort of cleric. So this is somebody who probably want to have sort of on the front row. Just going down at the class features, the subclass features. I mean, firstly, clerics overall, they have wisdom saving throws, charisma saving throws, light and medium aim proficiency, shield proficiency, so that makes them pretty good all-rounders. And with the subclass of life domain, you also get heavy armor proficiency, disciple of life, and domain spells. So heavy armor proficiency means that heavy armor will not impose any disadvantage on your attacks. Disciple of life means it empowers your healing spells, and domain spells, you get spells from the domain as well. So that I think is a pretty solid choice if you want a more melee build. Just looking quickly at the trickery domain, which we've covered briefly. So with that, just a comparison, you get the basic features of the cleric, plus you also get access to domain spells as well, and the final option for cleric is light domain. So the light domain is offered by deities of justice, majesty, and primordial flame, providing spells that dispel darkness and harm the undead. So that, I mean, all of them have proficiency against the undead, but this is going to be a bit more of a back row build. Looking at the special classes, so you get warding flare, which allows you to shield yourself with divine light, use your reaction to impose disadvantage on an attacker, potentially causing their attack to miss. So that can be quite useful. And they get the other proficiencies with the cleric, and each of them you're going to have a choice of cantrips and spells. So cantrips, they stay with you all the time. Spells, you're going to have to pre-prepare them. So cleric, I'd say all around pretty solid choice of class. If you want something a bit more tanky, then I'd go with the life domain. If you want something a bit more back row, casting spells, more light domain. And then if you want to just try something different, perhaps trickery domain. My personal favorite is the life domain. In terms of race, so the main stat that you need with a cleric is wisdom, because that's going to determine the effectiveness of your spells. So I think a really good choice for cleric. And turn this to a male, just in terms of my personal preferences. But I think the gold dwarf in particular is going to be a good choice for cleric, because they get wisdom +1, and that's really helpful for the cleric spells, and they also get constitution +2, so that's really helpful as well, because if you want to, particularly if you want to be a life domain cleric, you want your character up close and personal, so that needs some resilience. And clerics don't have a huge amount of weapon proficiencies either, so if you're playing a dwarf, you're going to get your battle axe, hand axe, and hammer proficiency, so that's pretty handy. The other options, you could go with a shield dwarf, because you'll get the constitution bonus as well, but I think the main choice there would be the gold dwarf. If you wanted to try something different as well, you could even perhaps try a wood elf as well, because they also get wisdom +1. So if you want to try something different, perhaps a more ranged cleric build, I would go with the wood elf, because you get dexterity +2, so you can do most of your damage using bows or short swords if you're in melee, and you get the wisdom +1 from that as well. So that's my summary of the cleric. So the next one is fighter. So fighter is pretty much the most standard sort of class you can get. Usually they're going to be up front and specializing in melee combat. Their main stat is going to be strength that you want to focus on. Just looking at the class features, so they get strength saving throws, constitution saving throws, they can wear all types of armors, shields, so they've got the best access to weapons and armor. Given the fact that their main stat is going to be strength, then the options are available. One is the one we looked at briefly, the shield dwarf, because they get +2 to strength, so that's really useful. Plus they get a +2 to constitution as well, and that means they can do good damage, and plus they're pretty tanky as well. So I think that's a really solid choice if you want to go with the dwarven route. Another really good choice is the Githyanki, because they get a +2 to strength, and they also get longsword proficiency and great sword proficiency as well. So that's also a pretty solid choice as well. Just going back to the subclasses for the fighter, you can't pick the subclass right out of the bat, but later on you're going to get a choice of Battle Master or Eldritch Knight. So if you want a more core fighter focusing on actual physical damage, I'd go with the Battle Master option. If you want to try something a bit different, perhaps if you're not taking another magic user, then you might want to go with the Eldritch Knight build, and you've got then access to spells as well. The only thing with that is that for your spells to be effective, you might want to have a high intelligence as well. Normally with a fighter you're not going to have that, but you can get an accessory later on in the game which can actually increase your intelligence if you want to focus on that build. But I think with the Eldritch Knight you've just got to think out of the box slightly. If you want something a bit more standard, then I'd probably go with the Battle Master route. So the next one is Ranger. So I'm just going to change the race to something a bit more Ranger-like. So Ranger is actually the only class in the game which you don't have in the companion, so it's a good choice in that regard if you want to have access to all of the classes. They come with a lot of pretty useful skills, so you can actually choose a favored enemy, which means you'll do extra damage to one of these enemies. I'm trying to think which is the most common in in early access. It's not entirely clear what each of these are, so not entirely clear, but that's one advantage. And then you've got access to various other additional skills as well. So Beast Tamer, you've cultivated a strong bond with an animal. So again, the subclass for the Ranger, you can't choose that from the beginning, but one of the key things with the Ranger is you'll probably want to have an animal companion, so you've got access to one of those. So more likely your animal companion is going to be doing more melee damage, and your main character probably going to be more range damage. The main stat for the Ranger is going to be dexterity, so you need to have a high dex. For that reason, that's why I would choose probably the elf, because they get +2 on dexterity, so it's a pretty solid choice. Another solid choice would be the drow as well, if you want to try something a bit darker, because they also get a +2 on dexterity, so that's a pretty good choice as well. Moving on to the next class, and that's the rogue. I mean, you do get one rogue companion in the game to start off with. I mean, rogues are all around pretty decent characters, so they've got a lot of helpful support skills, and armed with the right equipment, they can do some good damage as well. Similar to the Ranger, their main stat is going to be dexterity. Again, you can't choose the subclass of the rogue from the beginning. That's going to come later. The class features: they get dexterity, intelligence, saving throws, they can wear light armor, and they get proficiency with crossbows, long swords, and rapiers. So what your short swords as well. I mean, probably one of the standard builds you'll want to go for is to equip them with two weapons, the short swords or rapiers, which focus on damages based on your dexterity, and then you can give them a ranged weapon as well for ranged attacks. So one of the advantages of this game is that you don't use up an extra action point when you're changing weapons, so that's pretty handy. So they can do pretty decent damage both at range and in close combat as well. In terms of the subclasses, you get a choice of two. You can either go with the Thief, Brute, or Arcane Trickster. Thief is pretty useful, particularly with regard to disarming traps or opening locks. Pretty standard. Arcane Trickster, something a bit different. Again, if you don't have another magic user that you're taking along, then you might want to go down the Arcane Trickster and just try something a bit different. In terms of the rogue, again, go back to the races. So again, Alpha is quite a handy choice with the +2 on the dex. Again, Drow as well. They also get the +2 on the dex. And the other race that would be pretty handy would be the halfling as well. Got so both the Lightfoot and the strong halfling, both of them have a +2 on dex as well. Plus they have the lucky feature as well, so that's also quite handy as well. So I think any three of those are quite useful for a rogue. Moving on to the next one, you have the warlock. So warlocks, bound by a pact on all-powerful patron, warlocks trade their loyalty for supernatural abilities and unique magic. So similar to a wizard, but they can be effective to some extent in sort of close quarter combat as well. In terms of the overall class skills, you get access to the warlock spells. One of the main ones you're going to be using is Eldritch Blast. That's pretty handy, and that's a cantrip, so you don't need to pre-prepare that. You've got access to that all of the time. And they have access to wisdom and charisma saving throws. they also have light arm and simple weapon proficiency, so they're not going to be strong in more melee combat, but like I said, they can do the basics if you want something that's a bit more rounded. Again, and for that reason, it might be useful to have this as your main character, although you do have access to a warlock in one of your companions. In terms of the subclasses, this is another class where you choose the subclass from the beginning. You've got the choice of the Fiend or the Great Old One. I mean, you've already got one companion as well who's got this Fiend subclass. So if you want to try something different, you might want to try the Great Old One. I myself haven't got that much experience in using warlocks myself, so it might be quite a new experience for me as well. Maybe on my next playthrough, trying that. In terms of, sorry, just going back to the warlock. So their main stat is going to be charisma that you want to concentrate on. Now going to the races. And a good choice for warlock. I'm just going to change the gender just to change things up a bit. So tiefling is a good choice for a warlock because they get a +2 to charisma, so that's pretty handy. I think also just in terms of role playing, given the fact that warlocks are very sort of aligned to a devil patron, just the whole look of the tieflings I think is quite in line with what you'd expect a warlock to look like. You've got a choice of a few different types of tiefling as well, so I think that's a pretty solid choice. And the other one I would suggest would be the half elf, because they also get +2 to charisma. If you want to try something a bit different, half elf's also a pretty solid choice for warlock. And then going to the last class, we have, last but not least, we have the wizard. Just going to change up the class. Change it back to now. So, wizards, the masters of the arcane, is specialized in individual schools of magic. So, if you want to be sitting back and casting spells, this is definitely the choice for you. You do get a wizard companion, Gale, so you can use him as well. If you don't want to be a wizard yourself, but they have the widest range of cantrips and spells. Wizard does have to prepare their spells, but you do have a good choice of spells available. One of the main advantages of the wizard is that they can also learn spells from scrolls, so that's really handy because you do pick up quite a lot of scrolls on your travels, and rather than them just being one-use scrolls, if you learn them, you do have to pay a bit of gold, then you can add them to your spell book, so that's really handy, and then you can use them as many times as you want, provided obviously if you've pre-prepared them. So in terms of the subclasses, again, you're not going to have a choice just yet. Just dealing with the class features first of all. So you've got access to spell slots, intelligence and wisdom, saving throws. You can use basic weapons like daggers, darts and slings, quarterstaffs, light crossbow, but if you want to be using weapons, then wizard's probably not your first choice. You're mostly going to be using your spells. It's unlikely you'll be using a weapon that much as a wizard, and you're probably not going to be much in the front row, so you're probably going to be casting spells from a distance. In terms of the subclasses, you'll choose that later on. I believe it's at level 2, so you have access to either the evocation or abjuration schools. Evocation is a bit more damage based, and abjuration is a bit more based on a support role. I would say if you've got a cleric in your party who can play that support role, I'd probably go more in terms of the evocation route, and I think it's a bit more fun as well. If you just want to go out with your wizard and do some serious damage, then it's quite a fun build to play as well. If you want to try something a bit more different, then you can try the abjuration school, and yeah, that's something that you can choose even with your your companion Gale as well. In terms of races, so the main stat for the wizard is intelligence. So one solid choice is I would say humans. The thing with humans is they get a +1 on everything, so I wouldn't say that they're specifically geared towards any particular class, but usually a pretty solid choice for most things. And like I said, you do get that +1 to intelligence. And the other option I'll probably go with is maybe a half elf. Also not a bad choice to for a wizard as well. Gives you some more options there. So yeah, that's my summary of the races and classes. Yeah, having a lot of fun with this game. Do play around and see what works for you. Like I said, I mean, there's some things that you can do to increase your the effectiveness of the characters. A lot of it's just to do with roleplay as well, in terms of what your preferences are. But yeah, do have fun with it, and let me know how you get on. Please do let me have your comments in terms of what race and class you're using, also what works for you, what you think is the most enjoyable, and really welcome your comments as well. Let me know how you're getting on with the game. And if you did enjoy this video, please do like and share. And if you'd like to see more videos of this nature, please do subscribe to the channel as well. See you on the next one.